DRC says it won't allow China or any other foreign power to control its decisions. Speaking on the sidelines of a seminar in New York, he confirmed that the DRC will stick to its recently announced cobalt export quota system, with any revisions possible only in the long term if the government deems them necessary. The DRC is the world's largest cobalt supplier, providing around 70% of global demand last year. Cobalt is a critical material for electric vehicle batteries and other high-tech applications. In February, the DRC imposed a complete export ban on cobalt to control supply and to influence global prices. But from next month, the ban will be replaced with a quota system. Now, under the new quota system, the DRC will allow limited cobalt exports. For the rest of the year, shipments will be capped at 18,125 tons. In 2026 and 2027, the annual quota will rise to 96,600 tons. And this move replaces the earlier export ban and gives the DRC more control over global cobalt supplies. The government says the move is...
Africa is no longer the silent mine of the world. It is no longer the land whose mountains were carved open, whose rivers were poisoned, whose children worked barefoot in tunnels, feeding factories thousands of miles away. Something irreversible has happened, and it happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the beating heart of the planet's most strategic metal, cobalt, the mineral of electric vehicles, batteries, semiconductors, satellites, weapon systems, and the future of energy independence. If oil dominated the 20th century, cobalt dominates the 21st, and the world knows it. That is why the largest companies in Europe and America carved their supply chains around Congo. They built a dream that depended on a single assumption, that Africa would never wake up. That assumption died this year. The Democratic Republic of Congo, after decades of being treated as the world's mineral quarry, has shut the door. Not partially, not symbolically, not politely. The numbers are not just economic. They are existential. The cobalt reserves in the Congo Basin have been valued at nearly $25 trillion in future potential output and industrial value. And the country has now made an announcement. There will be no more mineral highways flowing to Europe's factories without a new deal. No more raw extraction shipped overseas. No more colonial discounts, as they are called inside Kinshasa. If the world wants the cobalt that powers its bright green promises, it will not be mined for pennies. It will be mined on Africa's terms. The seats of power in Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and Washington thought Congo would never dare. Yet the global energy transition is built on a single fragile artery of supply. For decades, cobalt flowed out of Katanga like blood. Train lines sliced through villages, carrying or from smelting plants owned by companies no one in those villages could ever name. Flights left Goma, Lubumbashi, and Kolwezi under armed guard, transferring minerals to refineries in Belgium, Australia, and the Netherlands. Behind the scenes, these minerals built billion-dollar battery plants in Europe. They built the dreams of Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, Renault, Stellantis. They powered the narrative of a European green future, electric cars on every street, clean cities, a world free from fossil dependence. But that world was never clean. The cobalt that made Europe's sustainability dreams possible was mined by Africans working in trenches, exposed to toxic dust, left with broken lungs and broken futures. The cobalt was cheap because Africa was kept cheap. History hid the truth in polite language, development agreements, public-private partnerships, responsible mining initiatives, audits, compliance frameworks, and every one of those documents carried the same invisible headline: Europe keeps the value. Africa keeps the holes in the ground. But a government in Kinshasa decided that narrative ends now. The Congo Ally Mining Reform Act is not a press release. It is a declaration of war on the economic model that has drained African nations for over 100 years. It states that cobalt exports will not be shipped raw. It demands processing facilities on African soil. It obliges any foreign actor to partner with Congolese firms, employ Congolese workers, and refine cobalt in Congolese plants. It requires contracts to publicly disclose the real value of assets, which mining giants previously buried under shell companies and offshore banks. And the pipeline, The giant network of supply contracts funneling cobalt straight into European battery factories has been frozen. That is why the media suddenly went silent. They cannot afford to panic openly, but the markets are panicking for them. European EV projections collapse when battery metals are uncertain. Production lines in Stuttgart and Wolfsburg rely on deliveries measured in tons per hour. If cobalt does not arrive, the future stops. The spreadsheets evaporate. Investors pull out. Billions in subsidies become irrelevant. The political narrative falls apart. This is not a small disruption. This is a chain reaction. Lithium without cobalt is a skeleton. Nickel without cobalt has no spine. Silicon without cobalt has no muscle. You cannot build an electric world if your battery metal is locked behind a border you do not control. For the first time since colonization, Congo looks at Europe and says, "You may need us more than we need you." And behind that decision lies another force. Beijing. China did not build wealth in Africa by lecturing. It built roads, ports, energy grids, smelting facilities, refineries, vocational schools. It offered what Europe refused: value creation on African soil. The world's EV ecosystem is welded to Congolese cobalt. The world's cobalt ecosystem is increasingly welded to Chinese infrastructure. China understands mineral leverage. It owns 70% of the refining chain. It dominates cathode manufacturing. It controls raw-to-refined transitions that Western firms cannot replicate quickly. And Beijing is not interested in preserving Europe's illusion of dominance. African leaders have now realized this leverage is a bargaining weapon. They speak the language of industrial sovereignty. They repeat one phrase: no more extraction without transformation. Cobalt is not copper. It is not gold. It is not a vanity metal for jewelry or private vaults. It is the marrow of digital civilization. Without it, batteries shrink. Energy density collapses. Range drops. Charging cycles fail. And every European carmaker's promises become lies. The world pretended cobalt was environmental salvation. They told consumers electric vehicles save the planet. But Congo watched European executives celebrate profits while Congolese children inhaled cobalt dust so toxic it turned their fingernails blue. The hypocrisy was not hidden. It was televised. It was audited. It was certified. And still the cobalt pipeline flowed. The Congolese government has shut it down. This is the new age. Africa's minerals, Africa's terms. The European Commission cannot bully its way through this. Sanctions do not change geology. Brussels cannot manufacture cobalt from thin air. Germany cannot mine lithium in the Swiss Alps. France cannot dig cobalt out of Bordeaux vineyards. Africa holds the key, and Congo holds the lock. The reaction has been disbelief. Policy analysts insist it will be reversed. Lobbyists argue the government will cave under international pressure. But pressure is no longer one-sided. Congo has alliances. The continent has momentum. Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Namibia, Angola, they are moving in formation. They are forming an industrial belt of battery metals. Zambia demands copper refining plants inside Africa. Zimbabwe bans raw lithium exports. Namibia blocks Chinese and Western companies from owning strategic mineral rights without local stakes. Tanzania forces rare earth processors to establish technology transfer hubs. Angola brings state-owned firms into diamond ventures. Africa is not protesting anymore. It is legislating. Europe knows it is losing time. They thought China would bend first. They expected African governments to fold. Instead, they watched the price of cobalt spike, manufacturers panic, and shareholders ask a terrifying question: what if Africa no longer wants to be a supplier? Because the truth is simple. The continent is not resource-rich by accident. It is resource-rich because the world cannot function without it. And that immortality of demand creates leverage no army can invade away. In Brussels boardrooms, the conversation has changed tone. It is no longer about charity, development, or responsible sourcing. It is about survival. Can Europe build a battery future without Congo? Can they find alternative cobalt sources? Can they accelerate sodium battery breakthroughs? Can they reindustrialize refining at home? The answers terrify them. There is no second Congo. The next country with significant cobalt reserves is Australia. Its production is expensive, distant, and controlled by firms already locked into Chinese refineries. Canada holds cobalt, but extraction there is wrapped in environmental litigation and community resistance. Indonesia holds nickel, but not cobalt densities on Congo's scale. And shifting global battery designs away from cobalt is technologically slow, dragging research, infrastructure, patents, and supply chains behind it. Europe has no parachute. They built skyscrapers of green dreams atop a single metal vein running beneath Katanga. And Congo has cut the elevator cables. This is what revolution looks like in the 21st century. Not armies marching. Not coups televised. Not mercenaries fighting in diamond fields. Revolution is regulatory. It is industrial. It is the moment a nation says, "We will not let foreign engineers get rich while our miners die." The world is paying attention. Investors are terrified. Analysts whisper that the Congo decision may be the spark that reorganizes mineral geopolitics for decades. If Congo forces refineries to move to Lubumbashi and Kolwezi, factories must follow. Battery producers will be forced to build training institutes, supply warehouses, 5G infrastructure, smelting hubs, and research labs on African soil. For the first time, Africa becomes the manufacturing origin, not the extraction origin. The Congolese president speaks quietly, but his ministers speak clearly. Every ship full of or leaving Africa without local value means the continent remains enslaved. Every refinery built in Europe instead of Kinshasa means children work for BMW salaries they will never see. Every pipeline flowing cobalt across oceans is a reminder that colonialism simply changed its name. They are cutting the pipeline. They are building factories. They are forcing the world to negotiate with Africa as an equal. And there is a deeper message beneath everything. Africa has learned from China. China did not ask the West for permission. It built its own industrial miracle. It took raw materials, refined them at home, manufactured at home, and then controlled the supply chain forever. Africa wants the same. Not charity. Not aid. Not debt traps. Not development cooperation. Ownership. Europe never imagined the day would come. But it has. And the shockwaves have already begun. When cobalt shipments stall, factories stop. When factories stop, car makers miss production deadlines. When they miss deadlines, they lose market share to competitors. When they lose market share, stockholders revolt. And when stockholders revolt, policymakers panic. This is not a Congolese protest. This is a Congolese strategy. Investors now call the Congo Central Bank asking for guidance. Battery companies request waivers. Politicians demand exemptions. And Congo simply responds, "Build in Africa." Elon Musk cannot solve this by tweeting. Volkswagen cannot solve this by lobbying. France cannot solve this by hosting summits. The cobalt remains in the soil until the refineries come. This is the world's new reality. Africa is no longer the bottom of the pyramid. It is the foundation of the future. And the builders of tomorrow must pay fair price or get nothing at all. Cobalt is no longer Europe's mineral. It is Congo's weapon. And Africa has finally learned how to use it.